الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Inshallah, we'll start our today's lesson, and this is a continuation of the last halaqah. Today we are going to address the other factors that made Islam the fastest growing religion on earth. Last time we covered several points. Today we are going to cover the rest of the points. Let me... You can see the screen, correct? You can see the screen? Okay, perfect. And brothers and sisters on Zoom, can you see the screen as well? The blue screen?
No.
Okay, 1 second, let me share it. Okay, here it is. You probably can see it now. Michelle,
Yes.
can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. So let's get started on this. Alrighty. Another very big factor of why Islam is the fastest growing religion on earth is Islam is based on logical thinking and pondering. Islam, third objective out of 5 is to free the mind, to have rational thinking and logical approach to everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the word at-ta'aqqul means reasoning or pondering or thinking 24 times in the Holy Quran. 24 times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this word to stress the fact that Islam promotes a free thinking, logical approach to every item in life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said as an example of this 24 times mentioned in the verses in the Quran, Allah said in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat 242, كَذَلِكَ يُبَيْنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He sends us messages from time to time so we may think or reason or ponder about these signs that He sent to us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said also in Surah Al-Mu'minun, verse 80, هو الذي يحيي ويميت وله اختلاف الليل والنهار أفلا تعقلون. Allah said in this ayah that He is the one who grant life and take away lives, and He also manage the rotation between night and day. So you may think about these rotations and you may think about the magnificence of Allah, the rotation between the day and night. So people with the rational thinking, they always should really think. We as Muslims are encouraged all the time to think about the creation of Allah, and that will lead us to more glorification of the divine God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think about many things around us. Think about the planets, the earth, the galaxies, our body, the brain, which is still being discovered over like many thousands of years. Human beings are trying to figure out how does this amazing organ work, the brain, how does the heart work. We are trying to discover all of these. So it is really one of the diminished form of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to think and ponder about His creation, and that should follow the glorification of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to have a private time, half an hour, 1 hour, sitting alone in a room or outside, only think about the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for hours and hours and hours. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that in the Quran. This form of worshipping kind of diminished in our time now. Don't see people really sitting alone, thinking in privacy about the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's all agree that this is a great form of worshipping, and let's agree to start to practicing it. Maybe you should dedicate or commit to dedicate half an hour a week to sit and think about the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said 11 times about the word yatafakkarun, thinking deeper, and the word in the Holy Quran. Here are some examples. So as you can see from all of the previous slides, Allah is always encouraging us, motivating us to think and ponder about the creation of this entire universe. I just watched the video this morning. One of the new Muslims, it was just maybe 15 seconds or so. She said that if you take a look at the planets and suns and the stars in the entire universe, there is no collision between them. They are working perfectly in a system that's very well controlled and consistent. While we are on Earth, there are 11,000 car accidents every day on Earth in all different countries. So that's really a comparison between the power of mankind and the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With the huge difference in the magnitude. What is a car? Car is a small vehicle, right? How do you compare the size of the car to the size of the Earth, to the size of the moon, to the size of the sun, to the size of other planets? It's no comparison. This is very tiny drop in an ocean comparing to the size of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creation. Yet this humongous creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is working in a very structured way, very consistent way that forbidding the collisions and the inconsistency. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also another big factor of Islam being one of the fastest religion, that Allah and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam always support science and seeking knowledge. Here is an ayah from the Quran: "O Lord, increase my knowledge and increase my comprehension." Allah also praises those who understand and seek knowledge. قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ إِنَّمَا يَتَذَكَّرُ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Allah said here, the people who really seek knowledge and become knowledgeable about certain subjects are definitely in higher rank than those who do not really seek knowledge. The Prophet ﷺ said also in a hadith, or actually let's talk about this ayah first. Allah said that يَرْفَعَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that those that Allah wanted really to guide them more, He will grant them the knowledge. So they will be in a higher rank. So the rank of any individual is kind of proportional to the amount of knowledge that he or she seeks. The Prophet ﷺ said also in another hadith, من التمس طريقا يبتغي فيه علما سهل الله له طريقا في الجنة. Anyone that seeks a path or a road for knowledge, any kind of knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant him an easy path to paradise in the hereafter. The knowledge here is not restricted to Sharia or Islamic knowledge, but it does encompass all types of knowledge. Medicine, physics, chemistry, biology, history, as well as the Islamic knowledge about the Hadith science, Quran science, which we will study, inshallah, down the road. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here praises those who are knowledgeable in Surah Al-Imran, when he says وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ يَقُولُونَ آمَنَّا بِهِ كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِندِ رَبِّنَا وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Allah said in this ayah that indeed the people who are closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those who have knowledge, who seek the knowledge, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made their path to gain knowledge is easy. Also in this ayah, Allah praises the knowledgeable people, the scientists and the scholars, when he says إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. Only those of his reverence who fear Allah are the scholars. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that the amount of knowledge in anybody's mind is kind of proportional to his or her level to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The scholars are closer to Allah. Why? Because they know much more than the regular person. And because of that, that will make them believe more in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His magnificent power. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here said in Surah Al-Imran, شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة وأولو العلم قائما بالقسط. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bears witness that there is no God but Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the angels, and the possessors of the knowledge, people who have knowledge, the scholars and the scientists. And we all can fall into this category. When I say a scholar or scientist, that does not mean a Nobel Prize winners, does not mean the scholars who publish books. It means you and me. Every one of us have certain area of expertise that we always gain. Like Joshua, for instance. I'm sorry, Brenda, I'm going to admit here.
What's the difference between you doing this and listening and you doing this and listening?
Got it. So each one of us has certain areas of expertise, and we enjoy really gaining more knowledge in that area of expertise, right? So that is considered knowledge seeking. You don't have to be like a recognized Nobel Prize or publisher of thousands of books. It doesn't have to be that in that magnitude. Anybody who's always have the attitude of seeking knowledge falls under this category. So that's why Islam is different from other religions, where the other religions really restricted the thinking, restricted the discoveries. I'm sure you know that in the mid-ages, when Galileo discovered that the earth is actually a spherical shape, not a flat, he was banned by the church, and he was forced to commit that his declaration of the spherical shape of the earth is false. Otherwise, he would be executed.
2 minutes ago.
I'm sorry.
The coffee pot.
Please, can you mute your session?
I thought you mentioned, but I wasn't.
Yeah. So that's the difference between Islam and other religions. If you take a look, I'm going to skip this to go to the next one. When Islam has a big rising in the horizon after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, a huge technology and science civilization of Muslims was established. Everybody knows that. It's not like a hidden or secret thing. Here is one example. One of the great Islamic scholars is Al-Khwarizmi, the one who established the algebra. The algebra has never existed before him. So Muslims really, when they implemented Islam, adopted Islam, and Islam spread beyond the Arabic Peninsula, there was a huge Islamic civilization until the mid-ages. And the Western hemisphere or the Western countries, they built their civilization on the foundations of the Muslim scholars. There are on the internet, as I said many times, copies of the letters sent by the King of France to Cordoba, begging the head of the state or the governor to allow the French students to study in the Muslim universities in Iberia, Spain at that time. So there was a huge uprising of the Islamic civilization. And as you can see, most of these scholars that really built these foundations, they were not Arabs. Arabs were probably 20% of the entire scholastic community at that time. So nobody can claim that the Arabs actually built the civilization. It's actually the Muslims who built the civilization. From different ethnicities, different geographical area, different background. When they all came to Islam, they found Islam promoting science and knowledge. They adopted this. This became the spirit among the Muslims. And because of that, Islamic civilization was established. So that's another big factor why people are really reverting to Islam. As I said earlier, that the Western civilization, the current civilization, is built on the foundation of the Muslim scholars' findings and publications. Another big factor why people are rushing to come to Islam is because Islam has absolute equality among human beings, regardless of their race, their men or women, their background, their skin of color of skin, etc. There's no difference whatsoever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this very clearly in the Quran. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى. Indeed, we created you from male and female, which is Adam and his wife. وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made you into groups and tribes and nations, so you may know each other, come back to know each other. And then he said, أكرمكم عند الله, the one with the highest rank in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those with piety. So piety is the only scale of differentiation of human beings. Not the color, not the national origin, nothing whatsoever. Only one factor, piety. And if you think about that, this is really a great merit from Islamic perspective, because piety and race or skin color, which one do we have a choice of? Do we have a choice of our skin color? We don't. Do we have a choice of our ethnicity? Do we have a choice of our parents? Do we have a choice of the shape of our bodies? I'm not talking about gaining weight or losing weight, diet thing, but your height, for instance, are we in control of our height? Can we control our height? We can't, correct? So these are fate. These things happen without our control. But do you have that choice to become a good Muslim? Isn't that your choice? And that's because of It is your choice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made that choice that you are in control of is the parameter of distinguishing the rank of the people. So Allah will never ask you or never judge you of things that's out of your control. You get my point? So it's always the choice of the human being to choose the level of piety, and based on that level of piety, at-taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rank us. That's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rank or look at every individual. We have a choice, we have the free will, and based on our free will, Allah will judge us in the day of judgment. Allah said also in the Quran, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. All the believers, regardless of their nationalities, background, ethnicity, skin color, whatsoever, they are all brothers and sisters, of course, regardless where they exist. So, Sheikh Magdi, are you saying that the Muslims in Indonesia are also our brothers, despite the fact we have not seen them? The answer is yes, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, every believer, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every Muslim and Muslimah, male or female, they are all brothers. And this Muslim community worldwide, they form something called the Ummah. I would like you to really take that note. Ummah. The word Ummah means the community of all Muslims worldwide, males and females. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said also in another ayah, إِنَّ هَذِي أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمْ فَاعْبُدُونَ. Allah said in another verse, and I didn't list it here, that this ummah, this community is one. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like us to be one, like us to feel each other, like us to sympathize, like us to share, like us to help, support each other. So our brothers and sisters who are being bombed and killed in Gaza, we have a duty towards them. They are part of our Muslim ummah. We should and must help them because they are part of our family. Think about your own brother or a sister that really get hurt. Wouldn't you jump right away to help them? The same applies to our brothers and sisters in Gaza that are being tortured and bombed day and night now. How can we help them? Now we can discuss this further. Number one is really, we have to feel them. We have to sympathize with them. We have to think about them. We have to care about them. Number two, if we can donate some money for their sake, let's do that. The third is if we can publicize the atrocity and the ethnic cleansing that's been done in Gaza over the social media, let's participate in that as well. These are all contributions that make us part of one ummah, part of one group, part of one faith. Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ here said that the nations before you, before Muslims, they have distinction between people based on their level of wealth. So the elite layer of the community or the society at that time, they were not subject to the laws. So if some of them steals or commit any crime, they would be forgiven because they are from the elite or the leadership layer. And if somebody with from the lower level commit a crime or a steal, they would be severely punished. That's not Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ said, these people were destroyed because of this reverted value system. In Islam, everybody is subject to the law, from the head of the state, the president, all the way to the one who cleans the floor and the lowest level. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuhan nasu inna rabbakum wahidun. We already covered this part. So the Prophet ﷺ said there is no difference, there's no preference, there is no higher rank or distinction between ranks of the Arabs and non-Arabs, the black or red or white skin color, except with one single parameter, taqwa, piety. So piety is the only single factor in the rank of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to distinguish between people. And think about this, taqwa is our choice, your choice. You can choose where to stand in the ladder of the taqwa levels. Another very big factor in Islam, Islam does respect and admire women like no other religion whatsoever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Al-Imran, فلما وضعتها قالت رب إني وضعتها أنثى والله أعلم بما وضعت وليس الذكر كالأنثى وإني سميتها مريم وإني أعيذها بك وذريتها من الشيطان الرجيم. Islam does recognize the difference between man and woman very much. But Islam indeed prefers women as far as respect and admiration slightly more than men. Why? Because women's role in the society is bigger and more fundamental than men. Yes, men are stronger, they go and earn their living, the household, etc. But the woman is the mother, the wife, and the daughter. There is also a little bit of misunderstanding about one ayah in the Quran. I brought this here to discuss it with you. In chapter An-Nisa, verse 34, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about if the difference happened between a husband and wife, there are approaches that the husband should take. The first one is really to give mild advice to the wife, and then the second step, if the wife insists to continue to be rebellious and disobedient to her husband, is to not to share the bed with the wife. And then the third step after that is وَضْرِبُهُنَّ means it does not, the common Arabic understanding of this word nowadays means beating. But in this context in the Quran does not mean that. It's misunderstood. So the husband does not have the right to beat the wife. We discussed this, Steph and I, several times. It means further the distance between them as a sort of discipline between the husband and the wife. The Prophet ﷺ says, أكمل المؤمنين إيمانا أحسنهم خلقا وخياركم خياركم لنسائهم. The Prophet ﷺ said, the best believers among you are those with good manners, good moral system, good value system. And the best among those with the good moral system are the ones who are good to their women, including wives, daughters, and mothers. So there is a huge chapter or area in Islam that supports the admiration, respect, and honoring women in Islam. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, in the last 2 to 3 months before his death, he was very sick. He stayed in bed most of the time, and then he would wake up kind of not really in a good shape, and then he would go back to bed to sleep. During that time, for about 3 months, the Prophet ﷺ, when he wakes up from his excessive illness, he continued to repeat 2 words. أيها الناس اتقوا الله في النساء. اتقوا الله في النساء وصيكم بالنساء خيرا. The Prophet ﷺ continued to say for 3 months, one single command, one single advice to the Muslims. Be good to your wives, be good to your women, be good to your daughters. Continue to repeat this. He did not say pay the zakah, he did not say go to Hajj, he did not say continue to pray. His advice was focused on one single thing, to respect and admire women in Islam. What does that tell you? Women are highly respected in Islam and admired from all perspectives. Also, this is a very interesting topic here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, we all know the story that Adam and his wife were created and they lived in paradise. They lived sinless in the paradise. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to subject them to a test. So he said to Adam and your wife, you can eat from every tree in the paradise except one. Don't touch that one single tree. In Christianity theology, or the Bible or the Gospel says that Satan came and whispered to the wife of Adam, and he tempted her to start eating from the tree. And then the wife of Adam started to tempt him to eat from the forbidden tree. And because of that theological concept, in Christianity, women are in a second grade or lower grade than men because of the original sin. They strongly believe that woman is the origin of sin on earth, and because she tempted Adam. In Quran, absolutely not. In the Quran, it's very, very clear here. If you read this verse, that the shaitan whispered to both of them equally, Adam and his wife, and they both committed the sin equally at the same time. They ate from the forbidden tree. Once they did that, then their private parts started to show up, it started to appear. Their private parts was not appearing prior to this incident. And because of that, Allah decided to bring them down from heaven to earth together. So they are equal in the first sin of mankind. I do remember in 2005, I had my son's wedding in Jersey, and I invited Sheikh Muhammad Qatanani, my teacher and my friend, to give the opening ceremony of the wedding. One of the people that I invited is Father Bill Potter. He was an Episcopalian priest. A very, very nice man. He invited me many times to speak in his church, Episcopalian church, in the City of Hope in New Jersey. And we built some sort of friendship. So I invited him to the wedding. When he was sitting in the wedding, he heard the Sheikh Qatanani, Muhammad Qatanani, speaking about this particular ayah, that the original sin was committed equally by Adam and his wife. The next day he called me. He says, I want to see you for lunch. Okay, what's going on, Father Bill Potter? I sat down with him. He says, how much idiot I was for 40 years promoting a very wrong idea in my church. What the gospel is saying that Eve is the source of the original sin. That is stupid. That doesn't make sense. Does not make sense to me. Now your Sheikh, your Imam Qatanani opened my eyes to study Islam further. And then he started reading the Quran. About 5 or 6 years later, alhamdulillah, he became Muslim. Only because of that starting point. Look at the Genesis here. I'm going to send this to you. And it says exactly what I told you. And the Genesis 3, it says exactly what I told you, that in the Gospels, they consider the first sin was committed by the wife of Adam. They call her Eve in Islam. We don't really have a name reported in any authentic sources. Just keep this in mind. The word Eve or Hawa is not mentioned in the Quran or in any authentic hadith. That's just a side note. But if you read Genesis, it's very, very clearly spells or puts the entire responsibility of the first sin on Eve, or the wife of Adam. In Islam, we believe that both of them committed sin and both of them are equal. There are more verses from Genesis here. I will send that to you, inshallah, as a PDF after the meeting. Yeah, so this is really a very nice story. There's a great scholar, his name is Sheikh Muhammad Sha'rawi. He's an Egyptian scholar who used to come on the TV, gives a lot of lessons. He's very well known worldwide. He died in the mid-90s. One day he was visiting England, and one of the non-Muslim English people told him, how come that you Muslims do not allow men to shake hands with your wives, your women? So Imam Sheikh Sha'rawi replied back to him, the story is right here. Let me ask you a question. Who is allowed to shake hand with your queen? Who is allowed to shake hand with your queen? So the man replied back, there are, let me read here. The man said, we have certain categories, I believe 13 or so, that are allowed to shake hands with the queen. Nobody else can. So Sheikh Sha'rawi said to him that all of our women are the same rank like your queen. There are certain category of people that are allowed. I'm sorry, the font is a little bit small, but I'll send it to you, inshallah. Sheikh Sha'rawi said, in Islam, we consider every woman to be also a queen. And there are certain categories that are allowed to shake her hands. These categories are the husband, the father, the sons, the uncles, the grandfathers. There are mihrim. We call them in Islam mihrim. A man that can see the hair, for instance, of the Muslim woman. that man, the mahram, is the only one who is allowed to shake hands with the woman. So we Muslims consider all of our women in the queen's category. Beautiful analogy. Take a look at this picture. Islam promotes the respect for women as a human being, as individual, to express her thoughts, to participate in the public life, to gain knowledge, to hold the positions, to hold the responsibilities, and to prevent the woman being looked at as an object. Islam put hijab as part of the character of the Muslim woman. And hijab is not only a dress code, but it's a whole attitude and manners and of conduct of the woman. This is a very important point to understand. Why hijab is imposed or mandated in Islam? To free the personality and the character and the contribution of the woman, and to prevent using her as an object in the society, which is heavily promoted by the Western society, even the worldwide now. Every media, every social media worldwide, they are trying to have the woman expose more parts of her body. What is the objective? To make the woman as an object, not a human being. To make the men attracted to her body, not to her personality, not to her mind, not to her thinking, not to her philosophy, understanding, etc. That point is very important for us to understand. Also, another big factor of why Islam is the fastest growing religion on earth, because Islam promotes mercy for all the creations. Not only human beings, but also for plants and animals. The Prophet ﷺ said many hadith about the merit or the reward for those who provide mercy to animals, to provide mercy to plants, to provide mercy even to objects. Like the Prophet ﷺ said in one hadith, the Muslim is not allowed to put a pan on the oven without liquids, without oil, without water, and let it heat so very much. Why? Because that really bothers the material or the metal of the pan. Even the mercy with the objects that we consider have no soul, the Prophet ﷺ always promoted to have mercy with them. Even when we sacrifice for the Eid al-Adha, for instance, the lambs or the sheep or the goats or the cows, the Prophet ﷺ strongly recommended in many hadith to have mercy with these animals. We should have really, for instance, one factor or one recommendation is to have the knife very sharp, so the slaughtering time becomes minimal. The Prophet also mandates that the rivets of the knife to have 3 rivets that hold the metal sharp piece to the wooden handle. There must be 3 rivets. Why? Because he said one of the rivets, if it is only 2 and one of the rivets break, then the knife will not cut, it will bend, and that may cause some pain to the animal. The Prophet ﷺ also recommended that we should pet the animal before slaughtering, and also recite some ayahs from the Quran, Surah Al-Fatiha, for instance. It is proven, there are so many videos on YouTube, shows that when the animal, when the lamb or the goat hears the Quran recited, they calm it down. And that's also a prerequisite for sacrificing the animal. So mercy with all creatures is very highly promoted in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, one day he was walking and he found a camel that has very tiny belly, kind of shrunk belly, and the bones are really sticking out of the skin. He did not like that, and he said, you should have mercy with this camel that really provides service for you. Go and feed your camel. The Prophet ﷺ said also here in this hadith, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote down the ihsan, the perfection of conducting the slaughtering or sacrifice of the animals. For the sake of time, I'm going to just skip this slide and then go to the next one. Do you have any questions before we start the new chapter? Any comments, any thoughts? Sisters and brothers on Zoom, you can also participate if you like. Anything about what we spoke about or any other topic? Things clear? Okay, all righty. So now we're going to go to the next chapter.
Can I ask a question quickly?
Yes, please.
The part where you're talking about in the Quran, it says like something about if the wife is not behaving to what's interpreted as beat the wife. Can you tell me which ayah is that? What's the ayah number? Do you know?
Yes, so I will go back a second. Basically, the word the sister in the Quran, وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ, that word in Arabic, nowadays, it's used for beating. Okay, but we don't really interpret, this is very important. We as Muslims do not interpret the words in the Quran with our modern or current connotation or understanding. We interpret the Quran and the Hadith based on the understanding of the Arabs at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is very important because the meaning of the words change from time to time, right? The same word may mean something 1,000 years ago that's different nowadays. So the word اضربوهن, I did do a lot of research about it. It does not mean beating at all. It may mean two things, actually. Well, the first one is to further the distance between the husband and the wife. So it's part of discipline, like silent, for instance, to be silent, not to talk to each other. But I spoke to my Sheikh and Imam, Dr. Muhammad Qatanani. He said, actually, the interpretation that he feels more comfortable with is really to have a marital relationship in bed during that time. That's what he said, and he strongly believes in that. So as if this ayah is saying that the first form of discipline is advice. The second form of discipline is to further yourself from the wife for a short period of time. But then the third step is really to have physical relationship with the wife. And then further the distance again. It's kind of like bringing the hearts back together. That's what he believes is the interpretation of this word. And of course, he's a great scholar, worldwide renowned scholar. Did I answer your question, sister?
Yeah, but I wanted to know also, do you know the ayah number?
Yes, I can get that for you. I just have to roll back several slides. Now we are going to talk about the components of Islam. What is this great religion that really covers the entire aspects of life is composed of? What are the components of Islam? Components of Islam are the following. Let's skip this. So the entire religion of Islam is composed of three components. The first one is the faith or creed or doctrine, in Arabic called Al-Aqeedah. And the second component of Islam is Al-Sharia. And the third component is the moral system. In brief, and then we'll cover this in more details. The first component is the faith, the doctrine, or Al-Aqeedah. I would like you to really understand this word and memorize it. Aqeedah or Al-Aqeedah. This is really the set of components of the faith, which is all internalized in the mind and the heart. They have no physical appearance. So if two people are sitting, you cannot distinguish the Aqeedah or the faith that everybody has. So these are all internal acts, internal beliefs in the hearts and in the mind. The second component is Sharia, which is applicable parts, the things that we do with our hands or our eyes or our thinking and mouth, applicable parts. And the third one is the moral system that includes principles, values, and etiquettes. Principles, values, and etiquettes. All this together is called the moral system of Islam. So the the creed or the Aqeedah is composed of 6 articles of faith. Of course, we will study them in a lot of details. And then the Sharia, the applicable part, is composed of 2 subcomponents. The first one is the worshipping, which means the first one is worshipping, the second one is dealings. So worshipping is the action that we do to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, including rituals, including fasting, including prayers, including Hajj. All of these things that we do seeking to be connected to Allah, the Almighty God, is called Ebadat or worshipping. The second subcomponent of Sharia is the dealing, things that we do human to human relationship. That includes marriage, that includes partnership, includes business, dealings between humans. So dealings are the relationship or the actions that we do between human beings, one to one or one to many, one to society, one to community, etc. The ibadat or the worshipings are also divided into 2 subcategories. The first subcategory is called the pillars of Islam. The pillars of Islam. These are the mandatory actions that we have to do to maintain the basics of Islam. The 5 pillars of Islam. Anybody can remind me what are they? Anybody? Fasting, prayer, salah, zakat, shahada is the first one, yes. And then Hajj, yes, exactly. So these are the 5 pillars of Islam. Shahada, prayer, salah, fasting, siyam, zakah, the poor due, charity, and Hajj, pilgrimage. But these are not the only types of worshipping. There are many, many other types of worshipping. Some of them are, for instance, reading Quran is a form of worshipping. The Prophet ﷺ said that every letter that you read from the Quran, the angels will write for you 10 hasana, 10 rewards, every single letter. So the companions around the Prophet were kind of puzzled when he said that hadith. So the Prophet wanted to give more details. He said, I'm not saying the word alif lam mim, which occurs in the beginning of many surah. That word alif lam mim is composed of 3 letters. He says, I'm not saying that alif lam mim will equal to 10 hasana. I'm saying alif is 10 hasana, and lam is another 10 hasana, and mim is a third 10 hasana. So when you say alif lam mim, the angels will write for you 30 hasana. The Prophet even gave that details to remove any ambiguity in our minds. So reading the Quran is a great form of worshipping. The more you read, the more reward you get. Voluntarily fasting is another form of worshipping. Pondering, remember about this word, pondering, sitting and thinking deeply about the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to magnify Him, to glorify Him more, is a form of worshipping. Removing of a harmful object from the path of people, either walking. Sometimes we were driving on the highway and then we found a big tire in the middle of one of the lanes. I pulled over with my car and then stepped out of my car. When the traffic was very slow and no cars are coming, I pulled that tire and put it on the side. That is also considered a form of worshipping. Smiling in the face of your sisters or brothers is a form of worshipping. Helping other Muslims and non-Muslims even is a form of worshipping. Carrying a heavy bag to stick it in and above compartment in a plane or a bus is a form of worshipping. Anything that you do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is considered form of worshipping. And that will be written in your book as good deeds, provided one single condition, that the preceding intention for that action is for the sake of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you have that intention prior to the action, that will be considered form of worshipping. Dua, supplication or prayer, asking Allah for something, is form of worshipping. There are more to come into this. So these are the components of Islam. Three major components: creed or faith, Sharia or applicable parts, moral, and moral system includes the principles, ethics, and etiquettes. Any question? Alrighty, so we have about 13 minutes left. So the Islamic creed or faith, the scholars, they call it al-fiqh al-akbar. That means the major component of the Sharia, the major one. It comes before Sharia. This includes the 6 articles of faith. What are the 6 articles of faith? Anybody remember? Believing in Allah, believing in the angels, believing in the holy books first, and then the messengers and prophets. And number 5, believing in the day of judgment. And then faith comes number 6. So these are the 6 pillars of Islamic faith. 6 pillars of Islamic faith. Every Muslim must have a solid belief in them in his or her heart and mind. 6 articles of faith: believing in Allah, believing in the angels, believing in the holy books, believing in the prophets and messengers, believing in the day of judgment, and believing in fate, F-A-T-E. The next chapter really talks about this in much more details. These are just the headlines. But every Muslim must memorize them. Please memorize them. Believing in Allah, believing in the angels, believing in the books, believing in the prophets and messengers, believing in the day of judgment, believing in fate. Please memorize them in that particular order. Order makes a big difference. Order makes a difference. Okay, great. So this Aqeedah or this belief, where they reside, are they external actions? No. They reside in the hearts and minds, the minds of the believers, us, the Muslims. We cannot really see them. As I said before, we cannot really look at a person and says, oh, he has a good Aqeedah or he has a bad Aqeedah. Now, Sharia, which is the applicable part of Islam, as I said, it's 2 components. One, which is a relationship between us, Muslims, and Allah. And then the dealings, which is really the relationship between us and other people on earth. These are the applicable part of the Islam. It does also regulate and guide the relationship between us and Muslims, between us and non-Muslims, between us and other creations, between us and animals, between us and the planets and suns, between and the stars, between us and the mountains, between us and all other creations on earth. Oh, wait a minute, Sheikh Mahdi, you're saying that Islam regulates our relationship with the mountains and forests? The answer is yes, absolutely. There are so many hadith and ayahs from the Quran that really highly advise us to preserve the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So removal of a mountain from one place to another, if it is not for the sake of providing help or support or facilitation to human being, we are forbidden to touch it. Fires that start from time to time in the larger forest. I heard that the last summer there was at least 30,000 acres destroyed in California in woods and forest. This is absolutely against Islam. Some people make these fires for fun, but we are absolutely forbidden to destroy any creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these dealings are the actions of our physical organs. The eyes, the mouth, the hands, the legs, anything physically that we provide falls under the Sharia. Does this make sense so far? Okay, great. Now let's talk about the worshipping, which is a subcategory of the Sharia, as we said. This includes the 5 pillars of Islam. What are they one more time? The 5 pillars of Islam: Shahada, Salah, Sawm, fasting, Hajj, Zakat first, and then Hajj pilgrimage fifth. And the sister said it eloquently, and that's the correct answer. These are the 5 pillars of Islam. There are other forms of worshipping of Allah, as I said, recitation of the Quran, volunteer fasting outside Ramadan, sadaqah, charity, the non-mandatory charity. There's mandatory and non-mandatory. The mandatory charity is called the zakat. The non-mandatory charity is called the sadaqah. So in Islam, that charity can be definition of mandatory and non-mandatory. The mandatory one is called the zakat. The non-mandatory or voluntarily charity is called the sadaqah. Pondering of Allah's creation, we spoke about this already. Smiling in the face of your brother or sisters, other Muslims, is sadaqah. There are so many other ibadat that we can do. As I said, the ibadah or worshipping is a global term. The scholar said includes any action that is preceded by an intention to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything that you do with a preceding intention that this is for the sake of Allah is counted as form of worshipping. The third component of Islam is the moral system that includes the ethics, like to be kind to the parents, respect and support the elders, sacrifice for others, tadhiyah. Sacrifice your time and effort and knowledge for others is also part of Islam. The value system, to value the Holy Quran, to value the honesty over money, for instance, to value the common good over personal gain. To value the common good over personal gain, what does it mean? That means if there is a decision to be made for either to take a personal gain for myself or to take a personal gain for the society, the common good, larger number, which one will prevail? To the society, of course, larger number of people. That's what Islam is promoting. Honesty, sacrifice, brotherhood. These are all values that Islam promotes heavily. Etiquettes of how we conduct ourselves. How do we conduct ourselves? The proper dress code for men and women. I missed that part. I should put for men and women. That dress code is part of our etiquette. There are 10 conditions for the woman dress code. 10 conditions. According to the scholars, the woman dress code must be covering the entire body except the hand and the face. Must be loose enough not to show the body curves. Must be thick enough not to be transparent to show what's behind it. Must be a modern or modest colors, not to be an attractive source of attraction. Must not to be beautified by like a lot of gold or a lot of silver or a lot of diamond. And also another condition is not to resemble, please pay attention to this. A Muslim woman hijab must not resemble other dress codes of other religions. For instance, it is haram, prohibited in Islam for a Muslim woman to dress like a nun. The nun dress is great. Why? It's covering the entire body. It's thick and loose, but it does represent certain religion. So that removes the identity of being a Muslim. It makes it fuzzy for the community to say, is this a Muslim woman or a nun? So we are forbidden to resemble any religious dress code of others. We know some of the Jewish dress code, for instance, is to put a wig to cover the hair instead of the scarf. Is this allowed in Islam? Answer is no. That's a dress code for other religions, not for us. Islam always promotes preserving our Islamic identity. We wanted to appear in the society as Muslims. We wanted to be identified by the public that a Muslim man and Muslim woman. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said that condition, not to resemble other dress code of other religions, Christians or Jews or Sikh, etc. Is there a dress code for men? Of course, there is hijab for men as well. Make no mistake about this. hijab is not in Islam is not only for women, it's also for men. And that includes loose clothes, thick clothes, not to show what's behind them, not to be transparent. And they must cover all of their private parts. The head is not private part and men can show their head, no problem, etc. What is very more important than the actual dress code as part of hijab is the conduct. So let me ask you a question to clarify this point. If a Muslim woman fully dressed, her dress code is covering the entire body except the hands and the face, and the dress code, the cloth is thick and it's loose, not perfumed, doesn't have decorations, excessive decorations of gold or silver or diamond, does not have any of that. It's a good modest color, not like a very bright color that attracts men. So everything about the dress code of that particular woman is good, matching Islam. But that woman conduct, cracking lots of jokes, interacting excessively with men, expressing some foul language, vocal language, etc. Is that an Islamic hijab? Answer is no. Everybody says no. So part of the hijab for women and men is the proper conduct. We must learn from Islam how to properly conduct ourselves in public. Also, the Islam teaches us how to eat. There are certain etiquettes for eating. For instance, if we are eating from a plate, then we must only use 3 fingers, not the entire hand to grab food and in very inappropriate way. We are not allowed to do that. Islam doesn't promote that. Only 3 fingers. We have to really follow proper etiquettes. And also, if we're eating from a big plate, we cannot extend our hands so far to grab a piece of meat that's far from us. That is not Islamic etiquette. 3 fingers, the closest point in the plate that I'm eating from, and not only to eat so fast as if we're going to die if we don't eat. That's not Islamic code or etiquette. We have to properly pick up the food swiftly, mildly, and then put it properly in our mouth. Are we allowed to open our mouth while we are chewing? Absolutely not. This is bad conduct, bad etiquettes. Islam prohibits that. So when we enter the masjid, do we step with the right foot or the left foot? The right foot, because the masjid is a clean place, a pure place. So we should step into the masjid with the right foot. Our houses, we should step into our houses with the right foot. Stepping into a bathroom with the left foot. Stepping outside the bathroom with the right foot. It's always about the cleanness and the category of the place. Coming from the street or the woods to the masjid, masjid is cleaner than the right foot. Stepping into the bathroom, dirtier place, left foot. From the bathroom to outside, the right foot. All of these etiquettes are part of Islamic teachings. The Prophet ﷺ said many hadith about it. When we speak, can we speak very loudly? No. Can we cut people in conversation? No. Can we say foul language? No. Can we say explicit terms? Like, sorry for my words, for sexual relationship. Can we say this? No. Absolutely not. None of that is part of the Islamic etiquette. We have to be very proper in our conduct. Lower voice, clear expressions, slow expressions to the point that the other side will understand it. Exactly what the Prophet ﷺ used to do. So part of our life must resemble what the Prophet ﷺ used to do. That's why we say this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Sunnah is for what we have to mimic, we have to resemble, we have to follow through. Proper vocabulary selection. This is just a quick summary before we end today's session. Components of Islam are 3 major ones: the creed or the faith or the Aqeedah, that is in the heart and the mind. Then the Sharia, which is the applicable part of Islam. Then the ethics, values, and moral system of Islam. We said also the Aqeedah are the 6 pillars of Islam, 6 articles of faith. The Sharia is two components, the worshipping part and the dealings part. The worshipping part is our relationship with Allah, the Creator, and the dealings is our relationship with other human beings. The Ibadat or worshipping is two categories, the 5 pillars of Islam and other types of worshipping. These are certain questions. For the sake of time, I will send it to you, inshallah. Do you have any question before we end today's session? Any comments, any insights, any questions? Brothers and sisters in Zoom, also you can express yourself. Alrighty, so that will take us to the end of today's session. Stop the recording.